Welcome to this week's Debunked. I'm Michael Brooks. Debunked is your weekly guide to the best rumors, conspiracies, and sometimes truths that lurk at the margins of the internet. On this week's Debunked, is President Obama about to become Secretary General of the United Nations as part of a secret apocalyptic plan that will empower ISIS, maybe even herald in the coming of the Antichrist? Let's check it out. Now, this is another story that really warmed my heart and got me excited because everybody knows the President Obama character that I do on the Majority Report. That's the Nation of Islam Obama character who hates white people, their sunscreen, their addiction to mayonnaise, and really sees them as a defective genetic product. And it would be in keeping with this theory if it was true. So Michelle Bachmann, the former congresswoman who was appearing recently on the End of Times radio program, which is hosted by Jan Markle and Eric Berger, warned that the Syrian civil war was setting up the conditions for a biblical Armageddon. It's an interesting angle to take on the conflict. And she went on to say that as a result of this conflict, the international community was about to, quote, give legitimacy to the Islamic State. And she went on to say that Iranian and Russian intervention in Syria was really actually setting up the groundwork for invading Israel down the road to get Israel's natural resources. Obviously, there's a little bit of a contradiction here because Iran and Russia are really fierce opponents of ISIS. I don't know how that exactly correlates with giving ISIS legitimacy, but so far, so good. We're getting to the good part. As part of this broader plan to invade Israel and give ISIS legitimacy, the next step would involve apparently President Obama becoming the UN Secretary General if he doesn't just stay president, which is always possible. There's always a lot of scenarios. And she went on to say, Obama, quote, this is Bachmann, Obama would not only get an empowered, powerful UN, powerful enough to see the United States come under the UN's authority. So this would be the plan, right? President Obama will become the next UN Secretary General. And unlike previous UN Secretary Generals that begged the United States to do things like pay its dues to the United Nations or occasionally participate in a peacekeeping operation, all of a sudden the UN under Obama would run the world and the United States. All right, so far so good. Makes perfect sense. Now, where did this idea of a UN Secretary General Obama come from? Well, apparently it was first picked up in a newspaper called Investors Business Daily, which I've never heard of. But I would not be running to it for investment advice. And they based their report off of something that, according to Raw Story, is a possibly non-existent report that first originated in Kuwait. Now, by non-existent, they're referencing a story that appeared in a newspaper called Al Jaridi, which is the same newspaper that reported last year that President Obama had threatened to shoot down Israeli jets if they interfere with his negotiations with Iran. So look, it looks like we're going to have to say debunked. And I realize one of these weeks I'm going to have to actually find something that I don't debunk that's actually true and not insane. But I do wonder if there's some type of psychic connection between my impression of President Obama and what's happening in Michelle Bachmann's brain. Because it's amazing how closely they track with each other. And there will be at least one universe where President Obama takes over in powerful United Nations and runs the world. And that will be on the Majority Report. And a new impression that I will be doing very regularly. That's this week's Debunked.